2023, Australia's date with EV destiny. The combustion to electric vehicle tipping point is getting closer, and 2023 is a pivotal year with a slew of new zero emissions models due here in the next 12 months. As the EV train adds extra carriages, will you be getting on board? Welcome. I'm CarsGuide Deputy Editor James Cleary, and joining me on the podcast panel to discuss the significance of what appears to be an automotive moment in time are key contributor Dave Morley.
Hello. Excuse me. I'm just doing a little bit of maintenance.
Okay. And the man whose story got this podcast ball rolling, news editor Tung.
Hello, everyone. How's it going?
All right. Now, we'll also cover off this weekend news and take a look at a cool but failed Toyota experiment, a Merc out of its natural habitat, and a suitably quirky French hatch in Cars in the Garage. So stay with us. But before we get started, shout out to Melissa Wade, who said, "Hey guys, big fan, just as we were wrapping up last week's stream and we missed it on air." So thank you, Melissa. Tung, the catalyst for this discussion is your opinion story, and EVs will not only be more plentiful next year, but more affordable as well. Kick us off with your thoughts.
So, we've all known that Australia has lagged behind, many parts of the world when it comes to electric vehicle adoption. Many car brands are just hesitant to bring out these models to Australia because they know that they're not going to sell all that well. Well, I've done the research, and next year there's going to be no less than 20 new electric cars that are coming to Australian shores. 20. That's going to essentially double the range that we have here. And it's not just, when you think electric car, you think expensive, you think high end, you think the likes of, Audi e-tron, Mercedes EQC, Porsche Taycan. But of these 20 models, it's actually quite a wide range of cars on all, across the entire spectrum. You've got, the smaller inner city runabouts that are going to presumably be a bit more affordable, like a Fiat 500e. GWM wants to bring in its Aura Good Cat. I think it's what it's called overseas.
Aura Good Cat. Yeah.
Look, the name's probably going to change when it comes to Australia, but regardless, it's it's a small hatchback with limited range, and it's going to appeal to those people who live in a city. We've got things like Kia EV9, which is going to target the Toyota Land Cruiser. LDV have confirmed an ET60 Ute that they're going to launch before the end of this year.
Before the end of 2022, right?
Absolutely. November is the launch date for that car. We've got light commercial vehicles like vans, and Peugeot wants to bring something like an e-partner, to showrooms as well. So, and there's sports cars. There's gonna, the Cupra Born, the Hyundai Ioniq 6. Basically, if you're in the market for a car, by the end of next year, there's going to be something that is going to pique your interest.
Dave, you're a person who's been around the electronic block a few times.
That's a nice way to put it.
Where do you stand on this proposition? Do you think that influx of new stuff is enough to tip us over?
Look, I hate to accuse anybody of rolling the arm, Tung, but, this is a bit of a no-brainer for me. I think, as we go forward, we will be getting more cars. They will be getting cheaper. But you're right. I mean, 20 new models, that's pretty impressive, isn't it? And it is the natural way of things. And whether you like it or not, it's what's happening. Get used to it. We got word this week in Victoria that the privatised coal-powered power station will be closing down within as much as 10 years earlier than it would have. It's just not viable to keep that old dinosaur chugging away on coal anymore. The maintenance, the upkeep has made it non-economically viable. It's in private hands. Guess what? It's for the scrap heap.
Wow.
So, things are changing, whether we like it or not.
Yep. I mean, it's not, to your point, Tung, it is a real breadth of offering. Mainstreamers like Subaru, Solterra, and the rolls off the tongue very easily, the Toyota BZ4X is another one. You're calling it maybe mid-2023 or before the end of 2023 for those two as well.
Yeah, absolutely. They've earmarked mid-2023 launches for those two cars. It's tough to sort of pin down at this point, isn't it? We're more than 6 months away from from the launch of a car like that. There's so much that can happen before then. Stock supply shortages, semiconductors, global pandemic is still sort of happening. These are all just penciled in for now, but interesting that you bring up those two models because they join, Kia EV6 and Hyundai Ioniq 5 and Tesla Model Y as a mid-size all-electric SUV, which is, one of the largest segments in the country at the moment. And if you're a family of 3 or 4 and you're thinking, well, what's my next car going to be? Should I wait for a Toyota RAV4 hybrid? Well, chances are you might be able to get into a full electric car of a similar size even sooner.
And tell me, Tung, question without notice, the MG4, is that classified as a hatch or an SUV?
I believe it's a hatchback.
Hatch.
So it's going to be
Nissan
around. Leaf size.
Yep. So that's a big one, with the impact that MG has made on the market, for it to hit with the MG4, which is a pretty sleek looking thing. Renault's going to have, I think it's the Megane RE Tech, maybe. So coming out of the clouds.
Every single car brand essentially is going to have a full electric car somewhere in their showrooms in the next 24 months or so.
No, sorry, Dave, go for it.
I was going to say, if they don't, it'll be like an SUV 10 years ago. If you didn't have an SUV in your showroom, you weren't going to sell any cars.
Yes.
Now it's electric. If you don't have an electric car, you're not in the game. And
that's true.
I think it's important to remember too that even though, enthusiasts like us go, well, there's things about EVs I don't like. For the average punter, your rank and file car buyer, they don't care.
No, it's true. Well, yes, go for it.
I was just going to say, it brings me to another point about all this. And I'm really I'm disappointed in us. I'm really tired of the partisan nature of the EV debate.
Yes.
If you get on, God forbid you get on the socials, someone sticks their head out of the trench and says, I actually just bought an EV. They're a loser.
Right.
And everyone who says that's as a dinosaur. I mean, we have to come up with a better argument than that. We have to be grown-ups about this. It's like politics. There's some good sides to it. There's some bad sides to it. Anyone who says EVs are all rubbish must enjoy being woken up by garbage trucks. Would not an electric garbage truck be a worthwhile endeavor?
If they still have an Allison transmission, they'll still wake people up.
That's right. But conversely, anyone who says the days of internal combustion are over, and has never redlined a 911 GT3 RS or driven a modern turbo hot hatch and got 6 litres per 100 kilometres an hour per 100 kilometres at a rate of acceleration that would shame a GT phase 3.
That's true.
There are good things about all these technologies, and there are problems with all these technologies. Can we please stop trolling each other?
Isn't that a great point? I mean, in America, it was typified by the good old boys in their lifted pickups rolling coal through Tesla charge stations. It was this really kind of gut reaction to change that seems to have been all pervasive over there, and there's a strong element of it here too. I think you're right.
I think a lot of those comments though do hit on some fairly good points, even if they're worded, not the best. So. Like one of the other big issues. So next year we might have the range of electric cars on offer, across the spectrum for most people. But what about things like charging infrastructure? Like, when is that going to catch up to a point where they sort of, hit critical mass and you're not going to have range anxiety like driving your car to and from work?
Well, you could go to the old, technically, supply and demand. If there's demand, people will find a way to make the supply. But will that happen rapidly enough? I mean, to Dave's point, coal-powered energy seems to be very much in decline. Can greener renewables catch up with the demand? I'd say when there's a buck in it, there's every chance it will.
There's also a case to answer here on the part of governments too. You say, yes, that we do have an EV charging infrastructure shortfall. Absolutely we do. But whose fault is that? It's not the fault of the technology. The technology to fix the environment actually already exists.
Right. It's the will to do it. Yes. Yeah. Now it's interesting. Before we go any further, it's interesting. Harry Tran says Toyota needs to fix the tires on the Toyota BZ4X from falling off. Apparently there's a recall overseas. So before it's even got out of the gates. But Tung, you make the point that so far this year, and the data we've got is end of August for registrations, 14,500 registrations of electric vehicles. That's 368% up year on year. And with all of these other newcomers, that's only going to get bigger. So you did some comparisons, yeah?
I think it's, first of all, I think it's very important to put that 380% increase year on year into perspective. Okay, so this year is the first year that Tesla have decided to report their sales figures on VFACTS, and that has made that's part of the reason why there's such a big jump. This time last year, Tesla, Model S, Model X, Model 3 sales were not being reported.
It was a mystery.
It was a mystery. So, it's 380% up, sure, but it's on a lower base, and it's because Tesla have decided to start divulging their numbers.
However, you have made the point that 14,500 sales, however we got there, is more than Audi, more than various other brands, so they're pretty telling figures.
It's not an insignificant amount, and that number is only going to grow as we move forward.
Yeah, so here you go, more than Audi, more than Honda, more than double the number of Jeeps that have been sold. So it's a substantial figure. So the question is, will your next car be electric, or will the car I buy after that be electric? And as Richard Berry has said several times, as a motoring journo, he feels like he's living in 2024. Because he's just that little bit further down the road, where he's experiencing some of the vehicles that people will probably purchase as their car after next.
Absolutely. I think it's just a natural question, right? If you were in the market right now buying a new car, one of the questions that pops in your mind has got to be, when am I going to go electric? Or when am I going to have to go electric?
Yes.
And if you walk into a showroom now and you have a look around, you might kind of think, maybe now's not the time. There's not enough vehicles, or there's nothing in my price point. Right?
Yep.
Come next year, come the year after that, or come your next new vehicle purchase, if that's 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, it's probably going to be electric.
Yeah. And look, sorry, Dave,
I was just going to say, it's my view on this is, at some point, the infrastructure is and renewable power is going to suddenly have the upper hand on $2.50 a litre petrol prices. And at that point, she flips.
I reckon also it's potentially a pincer movement, in that you'll have better battery technology, more efficient motors, meaning that range will improve, charging times will be better, at the same time as, the cost of fossil fuels going up. So it's a double whammy, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's going to happen. Anybody who's sitting there saying, I'd rather walk an EV, well, good luck.
Yes, that's right.
Enjoy your stroll.
Yes. Look, another one that stands out for me, it's been tempting us for so long, is the Rivian. The R1S Tung is the SUV version. The truck is called the R1T or something like that. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. They look fantastic, and they're doing reasonably well in the States straight out of the box too. Yeah,
they're getting fantastic reviews. Dr. Miro, not to plug another channel out there, but he quite fancies that car. He gave it a pretty high score recently.
Yep.
And Rivian have always talked about wanting to expand out to markets like Australia specifically. After they successfully gear up in the US and larger markets like that. Cool. And like I said with the Kia EV9, even vehicle segments where you think an EV doesn't really make sense. Car brands are already thinking about that and already going there. An off-road large SUV like a Rivian R1S or a Kia EV9 to take on a Toyota Land Cruiser or a Nissan Patrol, that's something that I want to see.
Ford E-Transit Custom, Peugeot E-Partner. What's the other one? Mercedes-Benz E-Vito. So those kinds of light commercial vans that are constantly operating in urban and city environments, it seems to make a lot of sense there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was talking to people from Isuzu trucks a few weeks ago, and give it a year or maybe 2 years, there will be electric 4.5 ton trucks.
Yes,
getting around too.
Wow.
They're already testing them in Japan in service. They're not on sale there yet, but they will be, and then we'll get them probably a year after that. And as what they call the last mile.
Yes,
so it's the delivery trucks that don't ever stray too far from home base
in that distribution network.
Yeah, and
wouldn't you rather?
It's funny because you look at the driving range of those cars that are on offer, and it's like 250 k's, maybe 300 k's, and you think, that's nothing. That's how on earth could you buy a car with that limited range, an electric car with that limited range? But then you look at the stats and you realize that a vehicle like that probably only does about 200 k's in a day.
Yes.
And it's just going to go back to home base and charge up overnight anyway. So that's all you really need.
Talking about the trucks, I thought one interesting, what seems to be a bit of a blind alley, was Scania experimenting with a pantograph on top of their prime movers. So you had the line infrastructure, a bit like a tram or whatever, along a certain section of highway. I don't think that's gone very far, but...
Well, again, if there is
reckon?
the will, I drove through, and we'll get to this later, but I drove through outback Queensland recently, and around Claremont, there's a huge coal mining industry going on. There are thousands of apartments for the workers. There are, at night, it's lit up like you wouldn't believe. And they have an electric train network in the middle of nowhere to move the coal. We can't, in Melbourne, we can't get an electric train to the airport. They've got one to move brown coal around up there. So, you know what? If there's enough money in it, they'll build it.
All right. Well, that's good. Great discussion. We'll wait for 2023 to arrive and see whether your prophecy comes to pass, Tung. But it seems as though most of the ingredients are there to make it a distinct possibility. But as of right now, we will go to This Week in News. Okay, so This Week in News. Dave, could I get you? We've got 3 stories that are clicking pretty furiously this week. Could you give us a top line on an Aussie effort that caused a lot of buzz a little while ago, but seems to have picked up the pace again?
It has. It's an Aussie-made ute, which is significant in itself. It's a dual cab ute. This one, however, is powered by a fuel cell. So it has a hydrogen tank. It combines the hydrogen with oxygen. You get water as your only emission and power. Beautiful. It's called the H2X Warrego, and its production, from what I can gather, is getting very close. Only catch is you won't be able to buy it in Australia. It's going to Europe first. Okay.
Nice. Yep.
Don't ask me why, but it is. I guess that's where the hydrogen infrastructure is. Really, and we don't have it here yet. Again, it's another thing we've got to deal with. There's a 200 kilowatt version, a 220 kilowatt version. There's all-wheel drive as an option. Yep. It's got 2,500 kilograms of towing, which is, okay, enough for most people.
Yeah.
And up to 750 kilometers of range if you get the one with the big tank.
Pretty awesome.
It is, isn't it? Richard Berry's done this story. It's a great read.
Okay.
And it's got a lot of technical details in there too, which I love. Things like the hydrogen tank runs at 700 bar to keep the hydrogen liquid.
That's plenty. That's plenty.
Yes. So it's full of that sort of stuff. It's a great
That's good. So for all the details, it's on the site. And I think it's worth mentioning that there is one among us who has actually consumed some emitted water from a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle. Tung,
Guilty.
I'm looking at you.
Yes, I did. I was fortunate enough. Toyota invited us down, and I went down to test drive the new Mirai hydrogen fuel cell electric car. And the big thing about this is the only thing that these cars emit is like water vapor, which turns into water, which is kind of like excreted out the back. And there's just a water trail that follows along. Well, I said, if it's just water, can I drink it? And they were like, I guess so.
Yeah.
And it just tasted like warm, unfiltered water. Would I go back there and have another cup? No.
Theoretically, it's the purest water you can get.
Well, maybe it
hasn't been tainted by anything. The only thing it's touched is the tailpipe.
The pipes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it should be beautiful water.
Well, it's also a beautiful segue, Tung, because the story I'd like you to touch on is a Toyota story, and it's a significant one.
We're staying in the world of utes on this one, but Toyota have made they haven't tried to hide the fact that they're studying the potential of introducing a new ute into the market, something that will slot in beneath the HiLux. So I suppose they've seen successes from the Ford Maverick, the Hyundai Santa Cruz, which are monocoque-based pickups, and based on their equivalent SUVs, and more of a lifestyle-orientated sort of vehicle, and said, maybe we can do one of those as well. So Byron's written this wonderful story. It talks about Toyota potentially showing off this car sometime next year, talking to their dealers and seeing what the interest is going to be like and whether or not they should produce this car. And I, for one, personally think it would be a smash.
I agree. I agree. It's interesting. We were only talking about it in the office the other day, the stats that we'd seen previously as to how many Americans allegedly believe Toyota is an American brand. Because they've got so much manufacturing infrastructure in there, and they race in NASCAR, and they're everywhere. They make the big pickups as well. So a vehicle like that would potentially do huge business for them in the States, and it would be interesting if it came here.
Yeah, that's really interesting about the American view that it's an American company. Here it was the opposite. You had an Australian-built Camry, and people said, "No, it's a Japanese car."
That's right. That's right. That's right. All right, that's beautiful. Thanks, Tung. I'll pick it up. It's a Chesto story, and we're pretty familiar with the success of the Ram 1500, and the bigger one, I think, is 2500, and on you go, the full-size American pickups. But he's onto a story where he's expanding on reports out of the US, Project 291, which is possibly a Ram 1200, or they might call it Dakota, for next year or early in 24. He's got commentary from some Ram senior execs, and it will be HiLux and Ranger sized. So they want a piece of that action too. Your engine options, 6 cylinders, 2 turbos, power outputs to put the frighteners on HiLux, and maybe even Ranger Raptor. We've commissioned a render, so we think we know what it might look like. So if you wanted to head to the site, all that info is there. Typically Chesto just beavering away, digging up information like that. So have a look if you want to know more. But now we're going to head to this week what will be a very interesting Cars in the Garage. Great. Okay. Cars in the Garage. Tung, you have put some of your own hard-earned down for a family vehicle, and the color, for one, is amazing. But also it's relatively recent, not around anymore. Fill us in.
Yep. So just a bit of backstory, I suppose, is that my wife has been traveling, so it's just been myself and our toddler, our 2-year-old, for the last couple of weeks, which has meant that it's been a bit tricky for me to stay in press cars or get the mileage in the press cars that I have had. So I've been driving a lot of my personal car, which has a car seat in it, and it is a 2011 Toyota Rukus.
Yes.
But not just any Rukus. It is the limited edition Halo variant that comes in the Voodoo Blue paintwork.
Voodoo Blue. Now, Halo, that's not a computer shoot 'em up game, is it?
It is a computer shoot 'em up game as well.
But it's not related to this car.
No, it's not.
Okay,
no,
gotcha.
No. I think Halo is in like Halo variant maybe. But
yeah, Rukus was going to be Toyota's Mini or Kia Soul, wasn't it? A customizable, aimed squarely at younger people that wanted to make it their own. Does your car bear any of that? Was there any customization on it?
No. Luckily, I managed to purchase this one off a gentleman, an older gentleman, because as youthful as they tried to make this car, because they priced it so high. I mean, it's based on a Toyota Corolla, same platform, with 4-speed automatic gearbox from the Corolla of that era, and it has a 2.4-liter engine that was in the Camry, I believe.
Okay.
But it was positioned and priced above the Corolla. So a lot of young people, a lot of first car buyers, they just went for that car instead. And this bigger, boxier, roomier Rukus ended up falling in the hands of, an older crowd.
Well, you guys correct me if I'm wrong. I think that was what tripped up the Kia Soul as well. It had a lot of potential, but it came in here. It was pretty exy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. And you're happy with it so far, Tung?
Oh, it's so good. So good. That Toyota reliability, despite the fact that it's more than 10 years old. I cannot believe the room and the space and the engineering that has sort of gone into creating, the inside of that car. It's wonderfully, wonderfully spacious. Only downsides is the gas struts on the boot starting to give out a little bit. And look, let's be honest, the multimedia system in there is really dated.
You can have those regassed, although I'd imagine replacements wouldn't be too substantial, but fantastic.
About $60 online for a set of struts.
There you go. All right, do that.
And I'm absolutely tickled to think that you think a 10-year-old car's old.
That's right. Yes, it's just run in. Just run in. Now, thank you, Tung. Speaking of just run in, Dave, you've been driving a vehicle on something more than a trip to the local shops. It's got some kilometres under its wheels, and you had a great trip with it. Tell us about it.
I did the 2022 Victorian Variety Club Bash about 4 weeks ago, and it ran from Melbourne to Cairns via Broken Hill, via Mount Isa, via
so inland. Gotcha.
And then across to Cairns. So it was about, I think it was about 7,000 kilometres all up. And then we turned around and drove it home. So we did about 11,000 Ks. We drove home in 3 days, 3 hours too.
And this is a 260 W124.
This is the thing, because all bash cars have to be a minimum of 30 years old.
Yep.
So we had a 1989 W124 Mercedes-Benz 300e 2.6.
Nice.
Yeah. And I tell you what, it was the envy of all the other bashers, because they had old HR Holdens and Fairlanes with no aircon and terrible seats, and we were cruising along with those beautifully phased, almost suspension seats and icy cold aircon. Actually, the aircon was the only thing that gave us any trouble. Now, I'll bear in mind, this car has, when we got it, it belongs to my mate, my co-pilot, an old rally mate of mine. And when he bought it, it had 220,000 Ks on it.
Righto.
We put 12 mil spacers under the front springs. We put some bash plates on it, and we put a tow bar on the front, and we called it done.
Wow.
And some LED lights so we could see what we were about to clobber.
Yes.
That was it. Other guys, like a lot of these people, they spent bazillions of dollars jacking the things up and putting them on all-terrain tires. We had a set of like winter tread tires and a roof rack, and talk about underdone. But the car went beautifully. We put half a litre of oil in it somewhere near Cairns. That's about it. The thing ran. It did not miss a beat the whole time. The only problem, as I say, was the aircon. And what was happening was when we thought it was turned off, so no air was coming through the matrix, the compressor was still running, so it was freezing.
Oh wow!
Wow! It was turning the whole heater box into a big block of ice. So we had no air. So what we had to do was basically pull a wire off, and my mate ran a switch from under the bonnet up through the glove box. You could open the glove box and turn the air off. So
Hello, Australia. Hello, Australia. That is fantastic. It could only have been better if you used a coat hanger and a pair of pantyhose for the repair.
Well, it didn't take my suit, so that ruled out the coat hanger, and I don't think Watto's mad about.
But that five link rear suspension on the back of the W124 would eat that up. That's fantastic. I'm sure you were the envy.
The only issue was it was a bit low in the back, because we had a lot of gear. We had gear for 10 days, including camping gear. Yeah. So we did a bit of particularly on the Birdsville track, we did a bit of grading. With the petrol tank. But we developed a technique where we got one wheel in the ditch and one wheel up on the center, and it was sort of like a bit of a 200 kilometer drift.
Drifting. Yeah. Awesome. And I saw you had swags. You were using fantastic. Well done. They're so good. All right. Now, thank you, Dave. I will finish off. I've been in a Citroen C3. Now, Citroen, they're not a big presence in this market. That's an understatement. But the C3 is one of their staples. It's a 5-seat hatch. Looks a bit like an SUV, but technically I think it's a hatch. It's $32,000 and change, $32,267. 1.2 litre turbo petrol triple. 82 kilowatts, but 205 Newton meters out of a 1.2 litre 3-cylinder engine, 6-speed auto on its front-wheel drive. On the good side, good torque. That's a lot of pulling power from a tiny little engine like that. Great seats. That's a bit of a Citroen hallmark. Generous rear room. You're talking about the Rukus, Tung. The room in the back of this one is good too. And the individual design, that's another Citroen trait. And it was universally liked. Wherever I took it, people saw it, they liked it. Things like cool interior door handles that are like off a 1950s set of luggage or something like that. Really interesting little details. The minus side, unfortunately, the drivetrain might produce a lot of torque, powertrain, but it's quite unrefined. So when you're trying to grease it off the line and just feed in some power or apply the brakes, it's a bit jumpy and you're finding it hard to drive smoothly. There's bugger all cabin storage, and the cup holders are definitely made for espressos, not your 7-Eleven big gulp. No center armrest front or rear, odd door bins where you have to kind of lay a bottle down rather than being able to stand it up. The finish I thought was a little bit ordinary. When you lift up the tailgate, at the back there are these little tiny, look like they're made out of tin, hooks to hold the dividing barrier. and you can see where the spot welds are and the metal's warped a bit where it's been spot welded, and you just think, wow, this is 2022. They claim 5.2 litres per 100. I did 8. So that's not exactly spectacular. I wasn't really wringing its neck. I think it just shows how hard the engine has to work. And a service annual is $505, which is way more than double what you'll pay for, say, a Corolla or something like that. So, you know, in summation, call me unadventurous, but it's the same money as a Corolla ZR. And by the way, yeah, a Corolla is $205 to service annually. You really have to want this Citroen. I think you have to be a rusted on, I'll choose my words carefully there, but a rusted on Citroen devotee to want this car. So there you go. That's what I reckon. And with that, we have reached the finish line. So thanks to all our listeners and viewers, and thank you, Tung. And thank you. And thank you, Dave. And well done to our production guru, Mr. Brett Sullivan. He's calling it as he sees it today because the T-shirt he's wearing says, "I don't even like the people I like." Jump into the conversation. Cars Guide is on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn, or traditionalists can email us at comments@carsguide.com.au. Listeners, please take a moment to rate and review the show. 5 stars would be great. An update for listeners, we're so close to having Apple Podcasts back in action with our own Mr. Pritchard, working with Apple to get things back to normal soon. So stand by. And viewers, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to the Cars Guide channel so you can stay on top of all our latest content. But before we go, overheard 2 business types near the service counter at the dealership when I was dropping our family truckster off the other day. One was describing their latest sales presentation with different types of bar charts, Venn diagrams, and pie charts, when a fairly greasy technician lurking on the other side of the counter piped up and said, "I used a pie chart once. It was made out of pie. I used it to gauge how much pie I'd eaten."
A man after my own heart there.
That's true.
You might have had the beer chart going too, I think.
Yeah, maybe.